Hello again, farmers. I am Jim Bob. Welcome back to Big Bud Farm, and we are going to take on a contract job. So here we are on field number 1, and this is the equipment we're going to be using. We're going to have a 78-minute time limit, so that should take us around about 35 minutes or so to actually do the job. So just about the length of a full episode. We get to use this modded Amazona fertilizer spreader, a throwback to Farming Sim 15 for those of you that recognise it. Now, I have not really used this, so I'm not sure on the working width, but I think it is a little bit wider. Oh, we are slightly off centre there. There we go. Let's try and straighten her up. So this is a little bit wider than the sprayer that we the spreader that we currently use. It actually gave us additional time. When I was scrolling through the optional, the options of different equipment we could use for this job, to use the spreader that we have, it was offering us 85 minutes to do the field. It's not a huge difference when you consider the size of this field. It's a big old field, 30 hectares. And we are definitely drifting inside the field a little bit here. I want to try and keep straight lines where possible. Without the GPS mod, and without clearly being able to see the ground below us, it does make keeping straight lines quite tricky. Your vehicles, especially with the ground response mod, do tend to deviate from a straight line from time to time. Let's get a closer look at this unit while we're going. Really nicely put together in terms of its appearance. Detailing on it is very nice. Definitely looks the part. Let's see if we can oops. I was hoping I could pop the cover there. Might not let me do it because we're actually in motion, and we have drifted again, look, see. It's so easy to do, to just drift. There we go. So, a couple of people have asked me, why am I playing this on hard? And the reason is pretty straightforward. You know, as I said in my map tool, this is going to be one of those maps that's quite polarizing. There are some people that are going to love it, there are some people that are going to hate it. I personally really like this map because it brings something new to console players that we haven't had before. We haven't had this really large-scale farming scenario before. You know, a lot of us have tried to make really big fields on other maps like Westbridge and Sosnovka and even Goldcrest, you know, by ploughing lots of fields together and large fields together to make these really big super fields that take, you know, a couple hours to work. But it only works in a couple of places on certain maps, and beyond that, you know, you're just missing out on that. You know, you end up with you know, one absolutely huge field, maybe 2 or 3 really huge fields, and then lots of tiny little fields everywhere else, and it just kind of ruins the flow of the map for me personally. It's why would you work these small fields when you have this really massive field? It just kind of becomes a little bit strange. So it ruins the flow of the map for me. That's one of the reasons, you know, as much as I loved Oldstream, I kind of stopped playing it after they updated it. A, because it made me... it ruined my original file. And B, putting those really large fields in, once I'd played about with them for a little while, it kind of meant I didn't need to work any other fields. I would just keep working those 2 or 3 fields over and over again, and that would be it. And it took away from the rest of the map by having such large fields and not really being able to do much with the rest of the map in comparison. So with this, because we have absolutely huge fields, you know, and there aren't that many of them as well, you get a really nice clear definition of what you can do with them. So for example, field 4 and field 2 are very much going to be your crop fields. Field 1 could also be a crop field. It's a good size. It's 30 hectares. It's nowhere near as big as field 2, which is 80, and even smaller than that, you know, compared to field 4, which is 104. You know, more than 3 times the size of field 1. But they're good sized fields. Now field 3 you could quite comfortably turn into a grass field and feed the BGA bunker. You could even turn it into a beet field and then do, say, beets or potatoes on field 5. You know, and have 2 smaller fields for, you know, root crops and or grass, and then 3 fields for crop. You could even put forestry in on part of field 1 if you wanted to, or even all of 1. You could just plant the whole thing with a combination of poplars and fir trees and just turn the whole right section of the map into forestry with the sawmill at the top. You know, there's lots of different options you could do depending on how you want to play the map, but everything is kind of scaled the right way, so you don't end up like you would on, say, Westbridge, where you plough fields 7, 8 and 9 together and end up with a massive field there, and then you end up with a massive field in the middle around the farm when you plough 15, 16, 17 and 18 together. And then you have lots of odd-shaped small fields dotted everywhere else. But when you have those 2 big super fields, why would you need to go back and work the other ones? It just kind of, for me, it breaks the flow of the map sometimes to have, you know, a couple of massive fields on a map with lots and lots of fields. This one doesn't have that issue. You know, we have really large fields, but not many of them, so they don't feel out of place on the map. They feel very much at home on the map. So that's why I like this map personally. But the reason I'm playing it on hard is because of the polarizing effect, and there's a lot of negativity. There's quite a lot of people, everyone who's generally negative about the map, their main thing is, oh, it's boring, it's flat, there's no terrain, it's blah 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 blah. But also a big complaint is it's too hard to get to play legitimately. Well, this is a hard playthrough, and this is a legitimate playthrough, and I intend to show with this that although we needed the nuggets to bring in some starting equipment, you know, to fit the theme of the map that I wanted to do, we could have potentially even done it without that. You know, we could have maxed out our loan, we could have got rid of the 2-meter plough and the cultivator, we could have kept the horse pronto, we could have replaced the seeder, not the seeder, sorry, the trailer with something a little bit larger. We could have brought in a bigger plough. We could even have brought in a second tractor as well to help us, you know, as a small one, a cheap one perhaps. But maxing out our loan, we could definitely have played about with some of our equipment and brought in some bigger gear to make it a little bit of an easier start. It would have been a rough start, a very rough start, much rougher than it is for us on this one. But it would be doable. But with the nuggets, you know, that's an extra $1 million. So if you sell all of your starting equipment and then do the nuggets, that's $1.6 million you end up with to play about with, bringing in the equipment that you want to use to get started. That's more than enough to bring in a couple of decent tractors, a big harvester, and some other bits and bobs as well, and really make a good, strong start for a legitimate playthrough. And on top of that, you then would have an extra couple of $100,000 with your loan as well. So in theory, you'd have $1.8 million available to play about with for equipment, assuming that you sold everything, including the harvester. More than enough money to, as I say, bring in the equipment of your own choosing. And then there's the contract work, and yes, it's long-winded on certain fields and certain jobs. But that doesn't mean that you have to do them. You can simply keep doing what I did and switch through the list of equipment that's presented to you until you find something that's going to be pretty quick in comparison to some of the other stuff. See, the Metris sprayer, which you would think would be good for this because of its operating speed, despite it having a wider working width, because the speed is so much slower, you're talking 95 minutes or so to do this job as your allocated time, whereas with this we're talking 78 minutes. Has a smaller working width, but it has a faster running speed. So just because something is bigger doesn't always mean it's better. Sometimes it's about choosing the right equipment for the job. And you get the opportunity to do that when you do contract work. You can just keep declining the job and reapplying and seeing what equipment he offers you. And then just keep going through until you find a set of equipment that you like and work with that. You'll get some money at the end of the job as well. Plus, if you've done it fast enough, you'll get a time bonus. That'll help supplement your income. I mean, we're going to get paid around, what, 25, 30 grand for this, plus whatever we get on the time bonus. That's not bad. I'm quite happy with that. That'll help clear our debt back down to zero, or at least close to it. But we didn't need to do this contract work. I mean, we have two fields that are at stage 2 growth, stage 2 fertilisation. They're growing away nicely. We have 2 tractors. We have a good seeder, a good cultivator. We have a massive fertiliser. We have a decent sized combine for the fields that we have as well. We have an auger. We have a truck with 2 trailers. Now, I could have been a bit more generous with some of the starting equipment if I hadn't gone for a truck with 2 trailers. If I'd just gone for a single trailer, smaller one, and not bothered with the second trailer and the truck and the dolly to link them all together, that would be an extra 200 grand or so to play about with. I could get a really nice tractor with that. So a legitimate playthrough is not as hard to do as people are making out. It's a time-consuming process, but it's not difficult. There is a difference. And that's, one of the things I was hoping to prove, one of the things I was hoping to disprove by doing this Big Bud series, is that a legitimate hard playthrough is impossible on this map, that it costs too much to get started, and it's unworkable. So we're just over a quarter of the way through the job. We're making good time. I do like this this spray unit. This might actually be something that we could look at as an alternative to the one that we're using right now. Maybe this will give us slightly better coverage. I'll have to check the actual working widths when we finish and see if this would be a better fit for our farm with the 2 fields that we currently have. Maybe it would mean that we would have to refill it more often, because it has a much smaller capacity. It only has, what, 8,200 litre tank compared to 20,000 litres, but that's still a pretty big tank. You know, that's more than enough to do field 3 on its own. You know, all the way from stage 1 to stage 3. It should just about be able to manage that. And if it has got a wider working width, then it means we don't have to make that additional pass and waste that extra fertiliser, because we'll cover the whole field in less passes. So yeah, I'll definitely be looking into that, seeing if that is going to be something that we can use going forward. Whether we own one or whether we hire one is another matter. I don't really want to get rid of the one that we've got, because we are going to need it when we raise enough money to buy field 3, although that is a little way off and we could get some decent money for it. But having said that, it is also, you know, half full of fertiliser, and that stuff is expensive, as we saw. There's at least 20 grand of fertiliser still in that thing. So if we do decide we're going to replace it and get rid of it, we'll be emptying it first. We won't be just selling it and that's it. Yeah, we'll be using that remaining fertiliser. I've paid for it, I'm going to use it. Can't afford not to. And it's ironic, really. This is the voucher that we would have been getting in this configuration with these wheels, and in this colour scheme as well. This is the colour scheme I would have gone for. White wheels, white bodywork. It's almost like a trial run of a tractor that I was considering getting. I just wish I could see whether I was driving in a properly straight line or not. I keep getting closer and closer to the sprayed area on the other side, and I don't know if that's because my previous pass I was drifting, or if I'm drifting now, or a combination of both. It's impossible to tell. Row crops make things so much easier to see. So there we go, 1/3 of the time, 1/3 of the field is done. We have used up just over half of our time, so we need to pick up the pace a little bit. Alright, let's see if we can keep a nice wide arc. Again, we don't have to be absolutely perfect with this. I say this every time I do a contract job where we're fertilising or spraying or something like that. We don't have to have perfect coverage on the field. We just have to do enough to hit the minimum requirements to complete the job. You can see when we ride in cab how hard it is to actually tell if we're driving in a straight line or not. We can't see the ground clearly enough. And according to this, it looks like we're actually going across the grain. It looks like the field was planted going from left to right, not up and down. So I have no idea if we are actually staying on a true course. I know we have that gap. I'm not too worried about that. But there's no real reference point. Even when you're above, like this, the reference points aren't perfect. So you can never tell if you are definitely staying true to a straight line or not. It's my biggest frustration about in-cab work on fields. This is why I really hope that when we get Farming Sim 19, we get some kind of guideline system similar to that with the GPS mod. Doesn't have to be exactly what the GPS mod does, and I couldn't tell you all the functions of the GPS mod because not having a PC, I've never used it. And because I know it won't come to console, I haven't really looked into it in too much detail. But I know it does more than just pop-up guidelines. But every single racing game out there has some kind of racing line that you can toggle on and off. Why doesn't this have a working width line that you can toggle on and off? I understand it would be a bit more work for the development team at Giants to put that system in place depending on the working width of the item that you're using, but I mean, is it really that complicated? Is it really going to take that much longer when creating the game? I honestly don't know, but it would certainly bring a lot of additional control to us, especially on the console versions. And it would really enable us to drive in cab a lot more, which is something I would love to do, but it's just, like I said, it's so hard to see where I'm going on fields like this. Even with the crop at stage 1 growth or stage 2 growth like this, it's damn near impossible to see where I'm going. So you can imagine how hard it is when it comes to harvesting. Right, well, we are nearly halfway. Nearly halfway on the field now, so I am going to shut up for a bit, and I will join you again very shortly. So as we approach the 2/3 mark on the completion scale, decided to switch over to the opposite side of the field. Try and create a new straight line to follow on the way back down again. See if that'll help. I doubt it, but you never know. Oh, where's that car? It's behind that screen, isn't it? See, we're drifting already, slightly. Oh no, he's a bit further ahead of us. Oh, of course he's moving faster than us, isn't he? Moving at a mighty 18 miles an hour. Well, it's about 18 and a half, actually, because when I went at 18 miles an hour in my 450 behind one of those, it ever so gradually just eked away from me ever so slightly, and when I pushed it up to the first of the two 19 mile an hour settings, I actually started to pull it back ever so slightly. So we're about 18 and a half miles an hour is the speed of the traffic. Slow enough that, you know, it'll drive you crazy. But also won't destroy you in a head-on collision or a side collision. Yeah, it's a little bit more forgiving. But frustratingly, it's that fraction slower than our big buds can do when you turn on cruise control. So you can't follow and just turn on cruise control and blindly follow, because you will end up running into the back of a car. But you won't have the speed. You won't have the speed to be able to overtake it. It'll take you pretty much an entire length of the road just to be able to overtake something, especially if you're pulling something. If it's just the tractor on its own, it won't be quite so far. Maybe half the road, but maybe we'll do that just for fun at some point in the future. Maybe we'll have a drag race with a car We'll start behind it, we'll close up on it, see if we can overtake it, pulling something along, you know, maybe our cedar or something, and see if we can get back in front of the thing without causing him to suddenly slam the brakes on by cutting in front of him. See if we can do a clean pass and then move back over in front of him before we reach the end of a road going up the map. I might do that just for a bit of fun. Alright. Gonna do another crossfade here, so I will see you in just a few minutes. So we are now inside the final 25% of the field that we need to do to complete this job. It's taken longer than I thought it would do. You can see we've already used up over 35 minutes. Not 35 minutes, sorry. This is actually less than that, isn't it? We had 78. No, yeah, I misjudged how long it would take. It would take about 40 minutes or so to do the job, not 35. So, maths proving to be my downfall there. Curse you, maths. Or math, if you're American. Definitely not too long to go now. But one of the reasons it's taken longer than it should have done, I think, is because we kept drifting on the other side of the field, so we kept losing some of the working width, overlapping way too much. Got to be a little bit careful now about leaving gaps, though. I can't run the risk that we won't actually complete the job once we link. You know, if we link back up to what we've already sprayed. If we've missed too much, we'll have to go hunting out some of those gaps and fill them in, which will really have an impact on our time bonus. We'll still have time to get the job done, but it'll impact on how much extra we get as a bonus payment. So as you can see, we have caught up to where we were, almost. Still drifting. It's still a problem. Well, we're almost done now on this field, so I'm hoping that as we reach the end of this pass, that'll be enough, and we won't have to go back up and fill in, you know, this sort of channel in the middle. I want to try and avoid leaving any gap on the left of us, if possible. So I'm constantly having to readjust to try and either keep that gap stable or hold the line. You can see we drifted on the last pass. When we're definitely not going in a straight line. You can see we're cutting across the field there at an angle. But we did that all the way up the field on the last line, so that gap's getting wider. Now we can start to straighten her up again now that we've linked back up again. So little bit left. So we had 78 minutes to do this job, and so half of that is 39 minutes, and you can see we've just gone over that. So we spent 40 minutes or so doing this field so far. We'll spend a few more just finishing it off. Getting really close now. We're not far. We're about, what, a third of the length of the field left to go as well. And that gap, that little sliver on the dial in the top right corner is getting smaller and smaller. So I'm hoping that, as I say, this pass will be all that we need to do Maybe we'll have to spin around and do a little bit more, come back up just to finish it off, but who knows. I was thinking as well, while I was doing this job, it'd be interesting to see when it comes to planting a field, whether or not, or even cultivating, whether or not we get the option of using some of the new equipment. I mean, we should, in theory, get offered the new cultivators. There's no reason why we shouldn't. We should even be offered the new plough when it comes to ploughing the field. But when it comes to seeding, will we be offered the air carts? Because they're two-part machines. Will we be offered those as well? I'm really curious about that. So that's something we'll be checking in the future on this field. We'll be looking to see whether or not we get offered the 25.6 meter Seed Hawk unit to do this, or even the Hatzenbischler Terminator unit, the 18 meter seeder. See if we get offered either of those two. And if we do, we should, you know, there's no reason why we shouldn't be offered the Great Plains seeder. I suppose it depends as well as to what the farmer wants to plant on the field, as to what seeder he'll offer us. Will he offer us, if he only offers us, for example, the Great Plains seeder, will he only offer that with row crops like corn and sunflowers and sugar beets, or will he offer that for regular grains as well? Yeah, these are interesting questions that we will hope to answer in a future episode. Who knows? If you may already know the answer if you've done some contract work on fields like this. If you have, let me know in the comment section. I'd really like to know. I'm really curious, because it's going to be a while before we get the opportunity to try it ourselves. Yeah, we still have plenty of harvesting and work on our own fields to do while this one grows, and this has still got to go through another 2 growth cycles, I think, before it'll even reach harvesting. Then there'll be 3 harvesting cycles it'll be available for before it then goes to needing to be fertilised and ploughed and cultivated, then seeded. So we're a way off finding that out for ourselves just yet. So just waiting for that completion to pop now. It's almost there. Any second now it's going to do. Come on, any second now. Any second now. It's like trying to predict when something's going to happen, and it's going to happen now. No. Now. And now. And you keep doing that, and then it suddenly happens as you go, now. Like that. There we go. Hey, look at that. See, I predicted exactly when it's going to happen. So there we go. We've got 25 grand for the job. We've got an extra 8 grand for our bonus as well. And look at that. Our time is whizzing forward, but our bank balance is now much, much healthier than it was. So just before we go, I want to have a quick look at the fertilizer spreaders. So the working width of this is 24 meters. And what is the Amazon? It's 26. So yeah, I think we might actually get one of those. It's actually quite pricey, 48,000 for a tank that's only that size. I mean, it's much bigger than this, and it's much bigger than the smaller Breedle, but this is only 67,000. And look at that capacity, 20,000 litres. Yeah, I think we'll get one of those, and we'll try that out. So, thanks for watching. I am Jim Bob, and I will catch you back on Big Bud Farm very soon.